Hello all. Welcome to our Praying James online community. This is going to be a great study, and I really appreciate your presence here. Our study of and meditation on and praying through this very practical letter will be greatly enriched by your participation. The time we spend in this letter has greater value, I believe, because we're doing it together. And as one person sharpens another person, we are enriching one another and encouraging each other and helping each other to grow in our faith and our loyalty to God. So, I'm grateful for your presence here. Now, as you know, the subject matter of the first admonition in this letter is what? Reaction to trials. And according to verse 3, the definition of trial in this context is what? A test of faith. James here is referring to anything that poses as a threat to our faith in God, or our threat to our loyalty and our allegiance to Him. Consider the trials that the original readers may have been experiencing. They are not simply the ills that each of us as human beings is heir to. They are experienced because of loyalty to God. They speak of persecution and oppression that is endured because of one's religious convictions. For the original readers, what were some of those trials? Well, we can only surmise by what we read in this very letter. Perhaps the rich were oppressing them, dragging them to court, chapter 2, maybe withholding their wages, and perhaps even the killing of the righteous, the martyrdom of God's people. Yes, these Jewish Christians had suffered a lot because of their faith in God and because they had been separated from their homeland and were dispersed, and we could go on and on. So I want you to notice, though, that these trials are experienced because of one's loyalty to God. Now, what is James instructing us to do in this passage? Well, he's instructing us to adjust our thinking regarding trials, to change our perspective toward them. He says we can actually face them with what? With joy. And I want to say, what? I can face hardship and trials with joy in my heart? Well, yes, James says you can. How is that possible? It's possible because we recognize that there is a purpose in trials. God allows them to occur in order to test our faith. You see, when we patiently endure trials and hardships, they serve to test the quality of our faith. So trials refine us. They mature us so that we are lacking in nothing, as James says here in verse 4. Trials, then, are character builders. You know, every time I say that phrase, character builder, I think of some of the first vehicles that our children bought when they were still under our roof. They were usually very old jalopies who didn't look very good and who didn't have much miles left in them. They were character builders. That's what we call them. If you can drive this car without feeling embarrassed, then your character is going to grow and mature. Well, James is telling us that trials can be character builders if they build that kind of patient endurance in us that is God's design for allowing us to experience those trials. This is how, in God's providence, He determines to make the most of the difficult events and negative circumstances in our lives. So, how do we apply these first 4 verses? Well, as Nancy Hartman wrote in one of her prayers on these texts, this calls for a bit of reframing. We need to see our trials in a different light. We need to have a different perspective toward them. They are reasons to rejoice. And why? Because God is using the hard times in our lives. He's not the author of those hard times, oh no. But He's using the hard times in our lives to make our faith in Him even stronger. So our application here is to try to reframe the hardships and the trials and the difficult moments that we face in life, that God can even use those hard times to develop our character, to mature us, to strengthen our faith. Now, for a preview of chapter 1, verses 5 through 12, James is going to talk about wisdom. Why would he talk about wisdom after talking about how we react to trials? Well, we'll discuss that, and you think about it. And then he's going to talk about the reversal of fortunes in the next few verses when he brings up the subject of the rich and the poor. And then finally in verse 12, here comes another reward for enduring our trials. I'll see you in a few days, and may God bless your reading and study of this wonderful letter.